guns in the shadows of the night.
Welcome to the shop. I wanted to talk through a couple of improvements that I have added because you're going to start seeing a lot of them as we work our way through the 2025 projects I've got planned. First and foremost, you will notice it is much brighter in my CNC enclosure. I installed a LED light up there. That is for you guys so that you can see better on these projects. Same thing with this little gooseneck on a 3D printed base, so I can get some better footage of the CNC when it's running. I can kind of move this around and give you all a better view, and then there's also that little tripod in the back that I can move the gooseneck to if I want to get that view from the rear. So I've made some improvements in how I'm able to actually get the content to you guys. You like tools? I like likes and subscribes. I've also made several improvements that allow me just to be happier. One of the ones that you have seen already is I've been using my power drawbar a lot. At the very beginning, when we first saw my Tormach, I did not have that installed. The person I bought it from said it needed some work. Turns out it didn't. It works fantastic. I installed it. It's a game changer, not having to manually do tool changes. Just press a button, pull out, put back in, let the button off. Absolute game changer. Now that I've used it, I don't think I could go back to doing manual tool changes. There's also two other absolute titans of happiness, I'll say, that I've added to my CNC. One of them is this fixture plate from Tosa Tools. This not only gives me a lot of flexibility in jigging things up, because all of these holes are precision holes that I can put indexing pins like you see here into, and I can butt things up against them. So I've got a lot of spaces that I can do that, and I can also put these indexing pins through jigs so I can positively index them really quickly onto the table. That's super cool, big time saver for me. But also you'll notice that I have this ground sides 6-inch vise now. And I would not be able to get away with this 6-inch vise on a Tormach 770 because of how big it is and because of only the 3 slots on my table. It just doesn't fit. But now that I have all of the granularity of where I can clamp things down with all of these threaded holes everywhere, I can now actually sit this a little forward compared to where it would usually sit, and it actually works with this machine. So having a 6-inch vise, super nice. And you'll see I've got indexing pins here at the front and the back. That allows me to simply just push this precision ground side up against the pins and lock it down. And I no longer have to manually tram my vices. So another massive, awesome time saver. So that's one of my favorite improvements that I've done to the shop recently. It's just the efficiencies it gives me and makes me not do things that I hate, like tramming. Out of this world cool. With the power drawbar also came the need to hook up compressed air. So I've actually run a independent line to this guy here. Why is this important? Because if you get chips on you, if you try and wipe them off, without fail, every now and then you are going to smash those chips into you and they're going to get stuck in your skin and it doesn't feel good. Wiping them off, rubbing them off, nothing works well except compressed air. So being able to blow those off and not ruin my hands is a game changer as well. It also allows me to clear out these holes if I need to use them and clean up my space so I don't have chips that are making things not sit flat when I'm milling. So this is probably one of the cheapest, most awesome improvements you can make to your machine. I don't know how I lived without this either, especially when you start messing around with steel. Those chips on your hands, if you have to wipe or rub them off, are an absolute nightmare. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten them just dug into me trying to get them off. Compressed air is the only answer I have found that works well. I did buy a probe, a digitizing probe. This one's Drewtronics. I got it because it's one of the ones that comes with a TTS style shaft already, so I didn't have to buy a holder specifically for a probe I was buying. I'll be honest, I'm trying to figure it out as we speak. That's why it's plugged in here. I have not really figured it out just yet, but given how much money I spent on this, I sure as shit am going to figure it out. And so you will start to see me utilize this moving forward. So if all you have is a wiggler, every video for the past like year or so, I've been using a wiggler. You can learn how to use a wiggler from those videos. Moving forward, I'm going to try and use that as much as possible. The other big change that I've made is if you watched my intro to Tormach video to get started, you heard me talking about a coolant called Synergy 735. I was using this because that's what came with my machine. It's what the guy I bought it off was using. I got some for free. Why the heck not use it? And then something happened. My x-axis started acting really weird. And I was having continual problems with like the sensors for that axis, and then eventually the y-axis as well started doing it, not working correctly. And the internet will tell you that means you have to replace those sensors that tell you when you're at the end of your travel for a given axis. What I ended up discovering was something about this was gumming up my system. Like a residue that it leaves made things sticky, and it made it sticky to the point that that's what was making it so that my motor could not overcome the stickiness on the x-axis. When it would push down the sensors, they couldn't overcome the stickiness to pop back up with the spring pressure. I don't know if this is Synergy's fault, or if maybe this is just super old. I don't see a date on it. So I really don't want to hold that against them. But in my research, I did find out that Tormach actually specifically recommends you not use Synergy 735 with their machines. And it's something about one of the chemicals in there and how it interacts with something about the metals that Tormach uses. And also, I have read that certain coolants may eat through the paint on a Tormach. If you've seen the inside of my Tormach, from the day I got it, half the paint's been gone, and it continues to have paint eaten off of it. So I have stopped using this, and I switched over to Extreme Cut 251C. I used this first gallon of it, and then I tried to find it locally, because shipping even a gallon is very expensive. So finding something locally would really cut down on my coolant costs. And I could not find it locally. But I did find a Qualichem dealer local to me, or local-ish. And despite the fact they didn't have Extreme Cut, they did have Q-Cut 215. And I asked them, I'm looking at the sheet here, what in the heck is the difference? And they basically told me, if you're really trying to push the limits of what a machine can do and the cutters, you know, Extreme Cut is the way to go. I'm like, yeah, that does not describe me. I'm a hobbyist that works out of my garage, and I usually break bits before they dull. And I am probably not pushing them as hard as I absolutely could. And he goes, yeah, Q-Cut 215 is fine. And it's like half the price. So Q-Cut 215 is my new recommended coolant. I no longer recommend the Synergy 735. And if you're really pushing things, sure, buy the Extreme Cut. But if you're like me, don't waste the money. I also finally caved and got a big boy compressor. So this thing is like 6 feet tall. I think it's a 60 gallon if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. The reason I went this route is I was just really tired of destroying small compressors. I'd go to flea markets and garage sales, and I'd get a small portable compressor from there, and I'd run it specifically for the sandblast cabinet. That's what was really hard on those things. I'd run them until they died. One of them I broke the reed switches on. Another one I blew gaskets and a seal. The reed switch one I was able to fix, but something else broke pretty quickly. And so I was like, all right, this one, not worth trying to chase demons on this. And then the second one where I broke the gaskets and the seals, I was able to replace those, and I actually do have that working and as a backup. But the reason why I finally caved and got this is motored machines especially compressors for this conversation, have something called a duty cycle that they allow. And that means out of every hour, how long are you actually running the motor? So for example, if it's got a 30-minute duty cycle, like you can run it for 30 minutes out of that hour. Those portable compressors have paltry duty cycles. And if you're trying to run 90 PSI on a sandblast cabinet as fast as you can, just like running it until it goes below 90, waiting until it goes back to full pressure and then running it again, you're drastically overdoing the duty cycles that those things are made to withstand. And so of course they start falling apart and dying. This Ingersoll Rand here, as long as I use their oil and filters, which they're not tremendously expensive, it's rated for continuous duty. So I don't have to worry about duty cycles. I can just plow through and sandblast for as long and fast as I want to. And so that was worth it to me. I was doing enough sandblasting and Cerakoting that I finally caved and got this thing. In line with that comment about doing enough Cerakote work to warrant getting the compressor so that I could sandblast more effectively, I also decided that it was the time to bump up the quality of spray gear that I was using as well. So if you've seen a lot of my previous content, I started out using these Harbor Freight, just cheapo, I think they're like 15 bucks, HVLPs. They work okay, but as I was getting more serious, I wanted a more serious gun. You have seen some Cerakote videos of mine with this gun already. I have been using it for quite a while now. You can see it's getting pretty grimy. You haven't seen me talk about it a lot though. I was sent these by them. I'm taking about a year of using them before I'm going to do an opinion video on them. That will come out later this year. I'll be doing both an opinion video on why I'm going to stick with these easily over the Harbor Freight guns, and also how I'm using them, what my settings are, because they're a lot more consistent, so I can finally give y'all actual settings for a gun that doesn't cost an arm and a leg either. And I'm also going to, at some point this year, in line with talking about using nicer guns, I'm going to do a Cerakote 201 sort of class for hobbyists at home, where we talk about like film thickness and setting up your fan correctly and a bunch of other tips and tricks just to take your Cerakote work to the next level. But this was also a large change that I made to the shop this past year, but you're going to see a lot more of it in 2025. And now last, and in all honesty, maybe least, is this metal cutting bandsaw that I got from Harbor Freight. Dirt cheap, you get what you pay for. She is not the best, but it gets the job done without costing me an arm and a leg for my hobby home shop. I was getting away with using my wood bandsaw set to the lowest speed setting for aluminum, but we are going to be tackling more steel projects in 2025, and the RPMs that wood cutting bandsaw was running at just made steel a completely inaccessible thing to cut. So I finally caved. I bought this bandsaw. You can do some improvements to it. There are videos online on how to make it better. I haven't bothered yet. All I've done is, on top of getting it set up to cut square and all that, is I did buy some blades. So I've got 3 different blades that I use. They're all from this just iMachinist off Amazon. I got, based on the standard types of materials that I'm going to be cutting, this blade on here is one that is specifically for hardened steels. This is what I'm going to cut 4140 with. That one is for stainless steel cutting in the sizes that we're going to be using. And then I did buy a fairly aggressively toothed blade specifically for non-ferrous materials for cutting our aluminum. The blade that comes with this has a very high teeth per inch count, which makes it only suitable really for cutting thin materials, to the point that it was overheating the motor when I tried to use it to cut thick stuff. So I think the aluminum blade that I got has like a TPI of like 2 or 3, so I can cut up to like 2-inch thick material and it doesn't really care. That's what I've done to the shop.